All right, so today we're going to see how many of these we can make out of this. So if you don't already know, Mantic makes tabletop games, including games like Dead Zone and Halo Flashpoint, which my channel is based on. And they basically use a cubular kind of design with their terrain. Basically, you move within cubes. And this is actually Mantic's own terrain that you can purchase on their My Mini Factory website, which I'll link in the description below. You can find all sorts of different terrain that they have that you can purchase for a very reasonable price. Basically, I wanted to see how many bits of this terrain that I can actually create with just using one spool of 3D printed filament, basically. So if you have a 3D printer at home, this might be a really cost-effective alternative to support the company that makes Halo Flashpoint, which I love to play, you love to play, and also get some really good terrain for pretty cheap. And in the end, I can show you exactly what you can make with however many pieces that I end up 3D printing. It'll probably be a pretty sweet map. So the two STL packages that I bought of theirs, let me read it, sorry, is the Dead Zone Core Worlds Battle Zone terrain for only $45, and their Fortifications Milestone terrain for only $20. So between these two STL packages, you get all sorts of different versions of this 3x3 or 75mm by 75mm terrain pieces. You get some with grades, you get some with lines. They look very Halo, actually. But you also get stairs and barricades and ramps and other things like that. So you really do get quite a lot of STLs for a pretty good price. Now, the two pieces that I wanted to test out originally were this kind of diamond-shaped floor piece and this kind of graded floor piece here as well, which I thought were really cool. I like the terrain to not be like super textured. These ones do have quite a bit of texture on them, which is nice for like dry brushing, but they still seem pretty simple, so I wanted to 3D print these out. Now, my first 3D prints, I actually tried to add a layer of filament that would keep them in place, but it ended up being too thick. I forget what it was called, but I'll show it on the screen. And then I ended up choosing a brim, which ends up being very thin, but still sticks it to that build plate, which is what we want. Now, I wanted to compare the quality of the 3D print by just experimenting with how fine the 3D print is going to be. So I tried one in like standard quality, which was like 0.2 millimeters, I believe, and another one in like 0.28 millimeters, which was a little bit lower quality. And I gotta be honest, the 0.28 millimeter, the lower quality one, looked pretty dang good to me, and it was a lot faster at printing out. So moving forward with all these prints, I ended up just using that quality, and I still think they ended up looking pretty good. But after I printed these out, I'm like, I don't know if I want these as floor pieces. So one of the cool things you can also, of course, do with any 3D print, really, is combine some of these pieces together. So I combined this piece together, and it didn't really turn out the way that I wanted it, but I was able to put doors in some of the open pieces, the open wall pieces, and create my own custom wall design, but it really only took like a couple of minutes to piece them together and print them out. They printed out a little bit thicker than I wanted to, so they used up a little bit more of the filament than I wanted, but you know, it still got the job done, and it ended up being a little bit more sturdy. But ultimately, I didn't really like that design, so I wanted to switch to a different design. So this is where the fortification pieces came in. Mind you, I printed out multiples of these single pieces, each one that I showed you. But I ended up wanting to go with a little bit smoother of a design. So they actually had this piece in the fortifications STL package, and it actually like connects like 4 times together to make one bigger cube, which I thought was really nice. It was cohesive that way. So I ended up 3D printing a lot of these. And I was very happy with the design because I'm going to be using this as the floor of my next map. But unfortunately, I didn't really think about how it prints out with these little holes in them. Now, these little holes are meant to connect these pieces together. You can actually 3D print the little connector pieces. And I did, and it did fit together. It's not going to be as great of a fit as if you were to go out on Mantic's website and actually buy their terrain and buy their little connector pieces. But you can definitely make them fit in order to make the aesthetic look better. But I would always recommend gluing these pieces together, the 3D printed pieces together. But nonetheless, I really wanted a seamless design when it came to the floor of the map that I'm making. So I ended up just finding a random square on like Yegi or, you know, any other 3D printed STL website. And I ended up just filling in these little rectangles with the square I got, and it ended up actually turning out really well. And you can see in these pieces that the holes are definitely filled up, but maybe they're not the tightest fit. You can definitely see some texture where I put the square in, but I figured it was probably good enough. I tried to get it as exact as possible within the STL software Cura that I could, but for some reason it just wouldn't be perfect in there. So I think it was okay. It just adds a little bit of texture, but it fills up all those holes. And then I ended up printing a lot of these pieces once I was finished. And yeah, I did run into some hiccups. I did 3D print out some of these. I usually printed them out 4 at a time just to make it easier. And some of them have these little like lines. I forget what they call it, but it's basically lines where the 3D printer stops and then starts again. So it creates these lines. And I just 3D printed in a way that all these lines would be on the bottom side of the 3D printed file. Now the coolest part about these pieces is you can actually 3D print them just standing up. You don't need any like brim to keep them on there without falling. They will actually just 3D print standing up just like this, and you just crack them right off. But yes, of course, I did have some mishaps. There was about 1 or 2 prints that failed, but they ended up printing out almost exactly enough to fit 1 cube. So that one I'm going to count as just a 1 cube piece. And in the very end, of course, I'm going to run out of filament. So I got as far as I could before I ran out and ended up 3D printing 4 of these like half pieces. But that's okay because these are walkways, right? We can make these into walkways. They do include just normal walkways and corner pieces in the STL package, but heck, you know, we didn't complete this print, but now these are little walkways, little 3-inch walkways that we can, you know, use. But okay, let me show you now how many pieces I was actually able to 3D print out using just 1 spool of filament. So I was able to 3D print 36 of these floor tiles that I filled in the little holes in. I printed 12 of the same floor tiles just with the holes in them. I printed 6 of these armored looking wall pieces with the holes filled in. I printed 4 of the diamond floor pieces, and I printed 4 of these kind of graded floor pieces, and then 4 of these custom wall pieces. Then we had our misprints that equal about 1 piece, and we printed out 4 walkway or bridge pieces. So that makes 71 pieces overall. Still, that's a ton of pieces, and the filament's only like 14 bucks. It's crazy. Now let's look at a map that you could create with these 60 tiles. All right, it's a new day, and this is not what I 3D printed. So unfortunately, because I didn't 3D print all the pieces with the holes in them, I just couldn't put them together without gluing them. And if you do want to see that with these pieces that I 3D printed earlier, then definitely stay tuned because like I said, I'm creating a map using these 3D printed pieces. But for now, this is the equivalent of how many pieces, the 71 pieces that I 3D printed. This is about 75 pieces worth of terrain here. We have a lot of the starter kit, the Spartan and Recon terrain in there, and then 1 piece that I created with Mantic's own terrain as well, so you can kind of see what it looks like all painted up. Now this is quite a bit of terrain for only like $14 in 1 spool of filament. This amount of terrain gives you more than enough terrain coverage for all the different game modes in Halo Flashpoint. Now imagine getting a 2-pack of filament for like 30 bucks and you're basically doubling the terrain that you see right here in front of me. You can see where this crate is going to take up about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of the terrain pieces that we printed out. Just to give you an idea of what 1 piece is going to look like altogether. But of course you can leave them open too to get you a little bit more coverage and save some space and create really nice hiding spots too. Now, is this a perfect way to show you what you can do with Mantic's 3D printed terrain? Probably not, but I think it's good enough to at least give you an idea of what you can do with how many pieces that you can print out. And I hope you can tune in next time to my future videos so we can see really what these terrain pieces can do. All right, bye guys, thanks for watching.